Okay, welcome to another Innovation at the Edge conversation. We host these on a regular basis to share our ideas and to elicit a really kind of lively dialogue around where the future of innovation is going to take us. We focus on several topics. So this is a series. We hope you'll come over and over again to do that. As we say, these are a conversation, so consider this the start of the conversation, not to be comprehensive and touch on everything about it. But because we do these conversations for you, we hope that you will ask lots of questions. You'll raise your hand. You'll be a part of this dialogue. This particular one is around the unmasking of XR. The reason we wanted to do this particular one is because when we go out in the world and we talk to people about what we're doing here, particularly with our MAVERiC Studio up on the 4th floor, it's very clear that while people have a general understanding of what extended reality and all these tools are, they don't really understand where these things will actually take us and the real important functionality and how these technologies are going to go beyond just merely a fetish and gamification, and really how we're going to solve some really important problems. So today, Trish, Joe, and the panel are really going to kind of dig a little deeper and hopefully tell you things that you didn't already know and share some insights that you probably hadn't considered. But before we get started, I just thought I'd have Paul come up here and kind of welcome everyone. Paul Robin, who's our Associate Vice Chancellor for Innovation and Commercialization here. This program sits within OIC. And so, Paul.
Thank you. So, I'm having a weird week. This is, for those of you who don't know, the Bio Conference is in town. This is the largest biotech conference in the world. And it comes here every second or third year. I'm not sure, just between here and Boston. But it is a crazy week. And there is this huge sense of excitement this year that I've never actually sensed before at Bio. That there's just, that we're on the edge of something, speaking of innovation on the edge, that we really are at an inflection point. And that we're going to see things happening in the next few years that we've never seen before. And that San Diego, unlike most areas of the world, is really going to be able to drive a lot of this. We're looking at, AI in healthcare. We're looking at climate adaptation. We're looking at space innovation. Space, real estate, so they're like space. And San Diego is probably better positioned than anywhere else in the world to really sort of drive that and become the global hub of a lot of these things. So there's incredible excitement around that. And I will tell you that UCSC is going to be driving a huge amount of that. So this is a good time to be here at UCSC for all new students and indeed faculty who are in the audience there. We're going to see a lot of changes, and a lot of it is in large part due to what we do in this building, right? This building is here to help you take your ideas and actually realize impact with them. I'm not going to go through what's in the building, Greg will do that later, but there are a huge amount of resources available to you to help you do that. MAVERiC is one of those. Greg was saying, I learned something tonight. I'm going to learn a whole lot because I know very little bit of it. But MAVERiC is incredible. This whole idea of AR, VR, and so on is going to change so many different industries in ways that we don't even realize it. So congratulations on being here at the beginning of something very special. And with that, I'm just going to say welcome to everybody, because that's why I'm supposed to be up here. So welcome everybody. I'm glad you guys can make it, and also to thank everybody in the panel. So thanks for taking time in the evening to really enlighten us about the promise of this next quarter. So with that, thank you very much.
And immediately I'm going to turn it over to Joe. Joe Unger is not only one of the co-founders of Origami Air, but he's one of the directors of our MAVERiC Studio on the 4th floor. And he will introduce the panel, and then we'll get the conversation going. So, Joe.
Where's the message from our sponsor? Not really. None of these people would pay for any of this, but we want to show you some stuff before we start talking. Welcome to the way of living, it's just the beginning of life. It's just the beginning of life. This year, the NSC will be giving 2-year $500,000 research project to study the effectiveness of VR and AR, among other technologies, for reducing workplace harm.
Here we are, and there's the Space Needle. There's the compass navigating to the north. And that's the key that I'm doing.
Battlefield is the future, the network battlefield. So when we're looking at how we can not just improve augmented reality, but how can we expand beyond that?
You should be seeing what I'm saying, just transcribed for you in real time, kind of like subtitles for the world.
Hi again. My name is Tilt, also known as Joe Unger, and I am out of frame because I like to talk to a crowd. But I'm here to facilitate tonight. As Greg said, I'm one part of the duo that runs MAVERiC Studio. Trisha Williams over there is my partner and co-founder in Origami Air with a couple of other people who are up in Seattle, Amy Winkler and Max Luthi out in Vermont. And all together, we've been running an XR publishing company for now 4 years, going into our 5th year, marking this month. And just graduated our 3rd cohort of Mavericks upstairs, who are upstairs right now, actually doing exactly everything we're about to talk about, and that you just saw online. But we're not here to really talk about that. We're here to talk about the reality we're about to step into, and also the extended reality we live in every day. But these fine people I'm with, I'm going to turn over to introduce themselves, so we can circle back and start the conversation.
Hi, so my name is, hello?
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Yan Wang. I started working in games about 30 years ago, actually. So my first game was a game called Descent up there. It was one of the first, it was the first 3D first-person shooter back in the day, and had a long career. Worked on Star Wars games. There you go. Okay. Worked on publishing operations. Basically did tour of duty in the game industry. My last corporate position was actually at Blizzard, where I was the head of operations and managing director for Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. And we launched about 8 titles in about 4 years. So everything from StarCraft 2 up to Hearthstone, Overwatch, and then I took a long hiatus from the game industry, did a lot of work in other fields, and last year I came in for a year and worked with a company called DTX, which is working on digital therapeutics, so like RX, the PT, and we're just launching our game called Vengeance right now, so the hard launch is happening. It's on the Oculus Quest, Meta Quest, and it uses a breath mechanic, so it's combining breath and action. So that's sorry.
There you go. We'll get it by the end.
Got it. Okay. And yeah, that's my background. So right now I'm transitioning to some other projects that haven't been launched yet, but mostly in health tech. I mostly focus on things like whole genome sequencing, microbiome tech, using big data and AI towards that, as well as psychedelics and the prompts and all that.
Hello. All right, my name is Brad Bitzer. Actually, I guess this month marks my 30th year in virtual reality. I started my career 30 years ago coming out of architecture school. And I spent my last 2 years of architecture school teaching myself how to build, program, virtual reality applications for my designs, which took me right into my career. I've had the good fortune of traveling the world, speaking to clients and at conferences about augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, you name it. And more recently, I was the director of product management for Euphoria, which is an augmented reality SDK. And even more recently, was building content at Deloitte Digital, and Meta very briefly. For the past year, I've also been involved here working with two of the startup groups as a mentor in the basement, and then kind of helping where I can in the MAVERiC Studio upstairs. I have a consulting business that's focused mainly on like spatial computing and capturing large terrains and trying to figure out how to bring those into a virtual world.
Hi, my name is Trisha. I'm not in the tech industry, but I'm moving into it now. I'm a conservation biologist, so I focus mostly on human-wildlife conflict. I've done a number of years of work working with different species around the world, working with different partners, different types of people, and how they interact with wildlife. Now my focus is mostly on human-elephant conflict, so I'm doing my PhD here at UCSD, studying human-elephant conflict in Sri Lanka, and we're looking at different ways to mitigate that conflict and de-escalate some of the conflicts there. And the biggest thing as well is I'm part of the third cohort here with MAVERiC Studio, so I'm looking at lots of different conservation applications that I see with science and how they can be used to kind of better represent our work, and then also engage more audiences and new people into science and make it a little bit more accessible.
Do you want to mention just for a second what that picture is?
Oh, yeah.
Or what you just finished?
The picture on the top left is a screenshot from our first project that we put together, which was kind of an interaction of moving around the world in kind of this human-elephant conflict landscape where we have a forested area and a farm area, and you can move around ideally as the elephant. It kind of changes perspective as the day goes on, kind of interact with the world as an elephant.
I'm Trisha Williams, Joe, and I did my intro a little bit. I've been building virtual worlds for 20 years. And I started in the AAA game industry, and for the last 7 or 8, you can see I set up like the sort of museum of headsets back there. The one on the far left, that was my very first headset. That's the first 5, and started building VR worlds there. I actually have a graduate degree in interactive technology from SMU that specifically taught me how to do this. So it's really fun to now, 20 years later, get to start MAVERiC Studio and kind of continue my career where I started.
So as you can tell, we've got a killer panel here tonight. So please keep questions in mind. This is an interactive thing. We're going to throw this mic out into the crowd as it goes along. MAVERiCs are going to come down, so you get your chance to talk to developers all night long. Okay, and so everybody here has built and shipped a virtual world somehow at some level, and you have hundreds of years of experience doing that here too. So I want to take us from what was, I mean, we've all done some games and we've all started there, and games gave us our tools to master, but now we've got this whole new generation. And what in specific is the elephant in the room, maybe? Sorry, I do this. You'll get used to it. And that's actually really artificial intelligence and generative art. How are we going to merge this generative world with this new frontier, right? Get beyond that headset and really to the content. Let's start with you.
Okay. I gotta think how deep to go into it. I think right now with generative art, there's a lot of, I guess, conversation around the source material and how like some of the provenance and IP is going to be tracked, managed, and reward incentive models around it. So that's certainly one piece of it. I think, and it's moving so fast. So I think the other piece of it is the resource side of it. I think like the amount of processing and the centers. I don't know if you guys watched the latest NVIDIA announcement over at Computex in Taiwan. There's like just massive amounts of infrastructure going. So I think the acceleration rate of what we're seeing here is just, it's not going to get any worse than where we are now. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, Brad, we had just, I should probably just leave the mic on. So we had just talked about kind of that with Earth 2, right? NVIDIA just dropped Earth 2. Look, you all have Google. What did you see in that? And I know you've worked in that kind of large mapping space, saying as we look at the generated worlds and get into creative worlds, or creative speculative futures, like what do you see that's happening right now?
I think for me, one of the biggest barriers of getting into XR is really the content creation side of it, how to build these 3D worlds, the 3D objects. When we would take demos off to a client like Boeing or Lockheed Martin to show them how to service a rocket or a plane or a drone or whatever, everyone sees the benefit in doing that and how great it is and how efficient it is in training people, but they don't see the 500 hours of building that happened beforehand. And so, a lot of this stuff that's happening right now, especially with AI and being able to scan, worlds with your Apple Vision Pro and with LiDAR scanners and all sorts of things, are making it much easier for us to at least get those worlds up and running and be able to put the digital content in them in appropriate ways that we can interact with them in ways that we never have. Earth 2, like you were talking about from NVIDIA, is a great case where these big companies are building digital twins of the world so that we can do climate simulation and prepare ourselves for natural disasters and all sorts of things like that. So it's good to hopefully see it going in that direction.
You just in your screenshot, right? You actually had, yeah, please, yeah. We're just gonna keep this down and we'll pull it back out and we'll toss it around. It'll be fun. But you just had that moment, right? You didn't pull from Google Earth or anything, but you created this, and you've been out and you're a field conservation guy, right? How is that experience of seeing the potential of generated worlds and all this data, and doing it by hand yourself from memory?
Okay. I think there's a big difference. I had an idea, for this project especially, I had an idea of what the world would look like, because I really wanted to bring people into my research in that kind of environment. And, without that generative AI and all these tools, it's really difficult to kind of get to that realistic point of view. And I think some of these new techniques can kind of assist with that. And then also bringing in large data sets, we work with we do drone mapping for the environment to create realistic worlds, and then processing that to actually be applicable is really difficult and something that we're working on, but it's going to take a lot of work. Having assistance with that is really valuable to really take people into the world and show them exactly how a world to an elephant feels, but then also potentially how that same world feels to an ant.
And Trisha, you're a hyper tool user, right? Degree on tools, another degree on tools, and also a concept artist. You started off as concept, and if we've heard anything, it's the thread of the journey. It's replacing everything. But this is the potential on the other side. I guess, what's your take on that right now? Seeing this in your studio happen in real time around.
Yeah, what you mean Mid-Journey and that kind of Dolly and being able to concept that prompt. Yeah, because I do know a lot of artists I did start as concept artists, and the idea of it being very threatening, it's oh no, now anybody can put a prompt in. But one of the things about making virtual worlds is kind of like Thanksgiving dinner, kind of. You work for a week putting this together, and then everybody sits down and it takes 20 minutes and they eat it, they walk away. And so the more that you can do up front just gives you a jump start. I don't know I know a lot of concept artists, a lot of game developers that use these tools every day, and I don't know any of them that have been replaced yet, but I know every single one of them uses it. And it just kind of gets their pipeline working a little bit faster. And it's, how many of you have been in VR? About half.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And I was trying to tally up the other day how many people I've put in VR in the last 10 years, and I think I'm close to 2,000 right now. And about half of those are the very first time that they go into VR. And the bigger and the more impressive and the more the beautiful, like you are now an elephant walking through there. That's what really changes people's minds and gives them this wow experience. And I think that using those tools just gets to that end faster.
You know, I kind of want to stick with this idea of concept among you guys for a while, especially because we've worked in creative studios. And it seems to be we see the headset, we get what the Apple Vision Pro can do. Like the marketing is there, but now the tools are there, and now it's in this space. It's like it's to us, the people, to come up with a concept. So what to do with it? Are any of you itching or like feel that too in that sense?
Yeah, I think what's happening now is we have this entire sensor network globally, all sorts of new senses that we never had access to. Everything from maybe talking to elephants directly through some sort of AI translation tool, or like I have a lot of friends that are working on basically a generative art layer that overlay do augmented reality across, Pokemon Go on steroids essentially. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, right now for those multi-layers and new ways to communicate and sense the world. And as we then start looking at those into like AI models, like I said earlier, it's not going to get worse. We're in a very interesting position. And I think a lot of it's also how do we manage unintended consequences and external externalities to make sure that I think everyone's, or most people are somewhat aware of the side effects of, let's say, social media or we'll just say social media and other technologies. So being very mindful of how this deeper integration is managed from a societal level. An important conversation.
Yeah, I think an idea around capturing the imagination, right, is something that we've all touched. We know we have the Arthur C. Clarke Center here on campus around researching the human imagination, which is one of the few places that happens here. And that our touch around XR is really about how do we see what we can't see, this world that we can't really touch. The language can be visualized now. We can talk to a whale. What is it that you're seeing now that you didn't, that's showing up in XR that you haven't been seeing before?
Yeah, I mean, when I think back, or when I started my career, I was at a very well-funded Skunkworks virtual reality center, and we had head-mounted displays like the Oculus, where you had to hold it up with your hand because it was so heavy, and that was attached to a giant raster machine, and then that was attached to a walk-in closet-sized silicon graphics supercomputer, and obviously things have gotten a little bit smaller at this point, but the magic of virtual reality, augmented reality, XR as we call everything, is being able to like trick your senses, right? So the idea there is to trick as many senses as possible to make it more realistic to the user. And so the visuals are getting much better. They're getting smaller. They're becoming less cumbersome on your face. The audio is pretty good. People are using spatial audio. We've done experiments with olfactory with your smell senses. So you're in a car and you switch materials in the car, and it goes from new car smell to leather smell to burning engine smell. I don't know, but and so I think as we progress here with the tools and the hardware and software are converging, haptic devices that make touching things a little bit more realistic. God only knows where we're going to go with taste. I've never actually seen a virtual reality experiment with taste, but I'm sure people are doing it. But I think that's really the magic is really blending the real world of how we perceive things and the digital world and making it look like it goes in there.
This earlier today we were going back and forth around kind of like a sensory perception that you have extra sensory or remote sensory perception, that we see the robot, but we also see human training. But we talk about sensory feedback. As this starts to increase, what do you think of that as value to you as a scientist?
Yeah, so it's like really, I think especially from my work, where we try, a lot of what we're doing as conservation biologists is trying to get into the idea of how the animal or species sees the world and how they interact with it. And I think it's really difficult to do that in a lot of concepts, especially if the animal is very different from what you are. And being able to actually see that in real life and actually experience it as the animal would is really valuable, and it gives us different ways of like actually interacting with the world, seeing what kind of conflicts they have, what kind of challenges they have, and also looking at possible solutions. So, for instance, I work with elephants, and walking around the world like an elephant might not be too different from what we are, but they have a lot of other tools. So you could render an elephant and being able to move like them. But then if you compare that to moving around the world like an ant, their world and how they see the world is completely different. And what we think might be a challenge conceptually about looking at data and saying like, oh, this ant isn't going in this area, or there's a challenge here, we might not understand what that is unless we actually can move around as the ant and see like, oh, well, that's obvious now because we're at the size of an ant and we can see what those challenges are. And being able really to get into that perspective and even maybe working on like different sensory perceptions, like different vision types and things like that, where, you know, not only will see black and like same colors as us or have the same type of vision. So being able to experience that will really enhance how we're able to understand animals' challenges with them.
So it's an interesting crosspoint on just games as simulation in general. If you look back at King's Quest, and there might be somebody in your history share that has King's Quest in there. But if King's Quest, if you all don't know, is a very old game that was one of the first PC games. But one of the things that made it special was that it had a full simulator of nature. You could watch a deer eat grass, and then that grass regrow, and then the rabbit comes, and then an eagle go get that. You can participate into that ecosystem. And if you know another local game company by the name of Rockstar, who shipped a game called Red Dead, that's also one of the best ecological simulators you can watch. You can wander around, watch a rattlesnake all day if you'd like. But I think it gets into a lot of your work, Trisha, on that picture of you behind you is from your TED Talk about different identities and kind of the superpower that is your avatar self. We talk a lot about world building, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about the superpower that is our avatar self that lets us experience life as an ant or something else.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I think when I started developing for VR was that, is because I'm a lifelong gamer, of course, so, but when you have a controller in your hand and you're doing WASD on your keyboard and you're running around and rolling workout and something like that, there's this huge disconnection between you and then the avatar that you're inhabiting, you know, your character. But when you get into VR, you are the character. You look down at your hands and they're your hands. You look at your fingers and the avatar wiggles their fingers. You look at your feet and the feet are there. And you are inside that character. And it was just this like mind explosion for me, like that I am the character at this point. But it absolutely changes your perspective, like you're saying. Being small, like just scale perspective is a really easy one to start exploring in virtual reality because it's not contained to this little screen on your phone or on your PC. This is everywhere around you as you look around. So when you become very small, you really do think differently. When you become very large, when you look very different, when you look into a mirror, part of that TED Talk that was about being able to switch your avatar, whether it's give yourself wings or make your skin blue or be a man or a woman or 50 feet tall or whatever it is. And that changes your personality and the way you think about you. And it ultimately comes down to who really are you when you don't have the facade of you? Like, what are you actually bringing to your personality to the people that you meet? And the people that live in virtual worlds, spend a lot of time in virtual worlds, meet a lot of virtual people. They represent themselves very differently than a human-to-human interaction.
Yeah, it reminds me of your work, and actually figuring out how to just basically move inside of a machine when Hello World was still pretty fresh for most of us. And, you know, comparison to your, if you all didn't know, you worked on a game called Descent, look it up. It's one of the first games where you really figured out full spatial movement. like flight and the superpower of that. Was that a transformative experience even that early?
Yeah, I think back then our hardware was super limited. I think we were building it on 46 Intel computers, so the clock speed was 66 megahertz. Or 33.
Oh, is much more capable.
Yeah, orders of magnitude. So the screen size was 320 by 400. There was no hardware acceleration, so we were literally just moving data in assembly language into the pixel to determine what color the pixel was. So things have come a long way now since those days. And I guess what was the question exactly? Like,
Well, because that, sorry, the expression of that, like figuring out movement, self, identifying self as pixel. And now we're in this fully realized self where, making yourself into an elephant and that transforming, you've been along that ride the entire way.
Yeah, so I guess I think what's interesting now is like at the time it was like the UX control. So I think one of the concepts right now is also like how do we abstractly translate interface into agency in the world. So whatever that may be, like we might be through some interface connected through some abstraction of like drone systems that are sensing the world as like sensor systems. So I think there's a lot of potential in new ways to perceive, and as well as increase like the level of agency of individuals through newer forms of interface.
Because we've been working a lot together over the last year on our VR flight school, which is really throwing VR back to its roots, right? A lot of this stuff came out of remote piloting, and now it's right back there again. Like, how do we, use these first-person view drones out there in the world as extensions of ourselves? And you've been at this for quite a while.
Yeah, I think there's a lot, remote presence and collaborating remotely has been a big thing for a long time. Skype calls and doing things like that are one thing, but then you start getting, at Euphoria, we had something called Chalk, where you could do a video call, but somebody could mark it up in a spatial sense, I guess, and be able to like show somebody how to service a machine or things like that. It's starting to get really interesting now because the devices that are out there can not only kind of scan you and represent you as a real avatar and who you are. You don't have to hide behind. That's a whole different scenario, of course. But you can actually walk in and be a part of somebody else's space, in their office, in their factory, and maybe that common point within those two spaces is just a tabletop that everyone has in front of them. And you can actually go in, collaborate, show somebody how to service a machine, look at a design for something. There's all sorts of scenarios for it. And it really becomes very interesting because it's that very blurry line where you just don't know that person's remote. They're actually right there with you. They look like themselves, they're blinking like themselves, they're talking like themselves. And so that's getting, of course, very interesting. We're seeing a lot of companies that are getting into the collaborative, more interactive collaboration space these days.
Well, for you, because it's two-way. Your kind of work is the center of the future where human sensor makes human world creator. Your work is where the translation is actually happening on the ground there. How does that navigating that space and incorporating all of these other people in, who can pop in and out, how does that even change your approach to what you're about to do? I know you're about to return to the field yourself.
Yeah, I think it kind of changes how it changes how I think about it, like how I can present this to people in a different light. And having these tools lets me think like, okay, my only output isn't in a scientific paper. Like, how do I really engage people in this topic? How do I get people to care about it? And especially for my work, we're working with elephants that have kind of different personalities, different feelings, and you get to know them individually. And then we're working with people that have emotions and ideas and how they interact with elephants. And then we translate that to stats and numbers, which people don't like, and that goes into a paper that nobody reads, and that nobody cares about it. So we're doing something that's very real and personable, but then it gets translated into something that people are interested in. And then I think with VR and kind of this interaction, you could translate those stats again into something that is personal, something that you can interact with, something that you can see and change, that like, instead of having a statistic that tells you how elephants are changing or where they're going or how they're like how they're increasing or decreasing, you can visually see them increasing and decreasing, or you can see how, you know, introducing a predator to a landscape is actually changing that landscape. It's an invasive species is killing off all local species. You can physically see that instead of seeing the stats of how that looks. And I think that makes a big chance of changing how people interact with the research and science and how they feel about it. I think really how people feel about it is really what makes those changes. So you can take that to local politicians or investors, and I think that's more valuable to take to them than a scientific paper, which they might not give us.
Trisha, for the last 10 years, as long as we work together, you've been building futures around me, future cities, future blocks, places that don't exist. The communication is translating community into infrastructure and showing its impact on nature, showing the cultures that result. Like from building Kansas City to reimagining a border wall to here and this future, how does this matter? Why does this matter to us getting to the future faster?
One of the things that is really great when it comes to XR is collective imagination. One of the, you referenced Kansas City a few years ago. We did a project with Kaufman Institute in Kansas City where we brought a bunch of different representatives from around the community. They came together for 3 days. We had all of them who generally did not interact with each other. Imagine the future, 20 years into the future, of a particular crossroads in the middle of Kansas City. And we did it all on paper and whiteboards, and we just, Joe and I let them imagine together until they have this vision in their head. That if you have all sat around and brainstorm together, you think you have a collective vision and everyone's thinking the same, and they are absolutely not. Your forest is different than theirs, not imagining. So we would do our best to, like, as concept artists, like scribbling stuff up on the walls while we're doing it. But what we ended up doing is recreating their vision in virtual reality. And we came back a month later, we had this huge party, hundreds of people from Kansas City, and said this is what they imagined for that corner. And people got to put the headset on and walk around a vision of their future that was of their city that was done by the people that represent them. And it was just a moment where all of them were like, oh, we can come together, we can imagine this together. And from that, about 3 different businesses actually got created, because when we see it, it becomes so real. Even if it is just a 360 envisionment of it. It just gets money flowing, it gets people excited, and businesses are happening, and a school curriculum actually happens as well.
We're at the top of the hour, can you imagine? We're there.
We should have some questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully that got your imaginations going as we have our MAVERiCs come down here and join us for the second half of the show. And Greg was going to help me run the crowd, but if anybody else has some questions out there. Yeah.
Trisha, you were talking about how people behave differently when it's their avatar in a virtual world than they do in a real world. Can you describe some of the dynamics there? Because it seems like we're at the very beginning of things, and understanding some of the positive and negative attributes of that early on seems like it would be really important.
I think the easiest way to talk about that is the people on like a really far end of a particular spectrum. Someone that's really charismatic and is just used to walking into a room, all eyes on them. All of a sudden, when you become an avatar and you walk in, you don't have that same presence. And I've seen them they don't know what to do because they don't just own the room when they walk into the virtual room. And they have to kind of rely on different parts of their personality, as opposed to maybe they're really big or like great fashion or they're like famous or something. And then once they get, we have some time, we literally have had some famous people in the roles that we built, because we did like the Fashion Week International, they had Tommy Hilfiger come in, and everyone would know him. But he didn't, he was in this little old space avatar with no arms and, or with no legs, and he was the same as everybody, and you could see him kind of struggle with that. And at the same time, we've had very, very shy people that generally are just wallflowers in that corner, but then they can turn the world off with a touch of a button. So they're all of a sudden testing, they're engaging, they're going up and trying to talk, and people don't see that they're shy, so they turn around and talk to them and really come out of their shell. So I think it allows people to explore or struggle with something that they didn't think that they were going to run into.
So a superpower tool that allows you to make worlds, do anything you want, any scale you want. Any other questions?
So the big elephant in the room with questions regarding current VR technology is that of user retention. We see from the statistics that the vast majority of people who own a current VR headset do not put it on over time, despite the initial wow factor. So that suggests that there are some potential design problems that we are facing in this kind of technology. What are your thoughts on what those design problems are?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Well, I think initially the form factor is not really fully there, and I also think it's important to think of extended reality as much more than just VR, because that's just like it's like a very basic kind of immersive interface, but eventually who knows whether it's going to scale down to contact lens level hardware. I think right now it's just, I think the primary issue is just like the form factor and the comfort level that we've got there.
Because you guys both have a lot there.
Yeah, I think it goes back to something I mentioned earlier as well. Well, there's a couple things from a business perspective. The gaming companies or people creating the entertainment content, they're going for the money, right? And so all that money is in console and phones and things like that. So there's, as more devices are out there, it will become more prevalent. But the other part of it is the content creation side of it. It's difficult to create that content if you're not making money creating that content. It's harder to do, it's harder to keep it fresh. And that's some of the, inviting things with augmented reality where the world is, your game. So the space is your environment, your eyes are the camera, your body is the UI and stuff like that. So you can really get real creative, and every day is a different version of that game and things like that, but we're not quite there yet.
I agree. In some of Trisha's and my work in the past, the word of the day was transmedia. That got popular. Now it's extended reality, but they kind of the same thing, right? Like we're trying to get this across all of it, and figuring out retention across transmedia is just going to be an ongoing problem as we splinters. I think there's like 6 new headsets that dropped like in the last week, and Augmented World Expo is next week, so Lord knows how many more is going to explode in that time. Right, and other questions? Oh.
No.
Oh, you. And now I'll give it to Paul.
Hi, so this is a question for Mr. Wong. Earlier you mentioned there was a game you're working on that involves your breathing. How, I was just, wanted you to go a little bit more in depth about that, and yeah, that's about it.
Okay, yeah. So that particular game uses a toning mechanic. So by detecting the voice, there's a way to control the flow of the breath, and then the mechanics are integrated into there. So, that's one way to measure. I think, like I said, that's one example of a interface that's not simply the visual VR thing. I think we're just scratching the surface now as possible.
Yeah, Satish, you were actually working a little bit with this on too. It's kind of like that extrasensory perception and using these different senses that we have in these different realities. You've experimented with this a little bit on your reality.
Yeah. So one of the things we try to do is changing kind of the vision of how the elephant looks and different, how the elephant interacts with the world. And one of the big things is elephants kind of enter human land at nighttime. So we shifted it where the world's not dark and then you change your senses. So it kind of happens gradually where you slowly start using other senses. So instead of using your eyesight, which you primarily do, as it gets darker, it gets difficult to use your eyesight, so you switch to hearing. And then we also kind of shifted to kind of the smell, which is the primary sense that elephants use. So we had things that would have a smell light up, and there's like other ways you could do that. We just kind of briefly got into it, but having a way of representing different senses that you wouldn't normally have, and having it naturally shifted to that kind of senses is interesting.
And a lot of us are, it's an excellent question, because a lot of us are used to the abstraction of interaction with virtual worlds, big sense. But it basically means we're used to using a mouse or a gamepad, right? And if you can run it down to A, B, C, up, down, left, right, that's not how you move, it's not how you think. I worked on a game called Sorcery that used a thing that kind of looked like this, that was supposed to be a controller. And our engineer had created hundreds of moves that were very natural to make a very Harry Potter game that I could. We shipped with 5 movements because it's so challenging to get users to retain to new ideas of control. But it's also the opportunity in this space for all of you devs out here who are looking to join Matter. I think there's a QR code somewhere. That's the opportunity, right? Like these things we think of as novel that are about to be routine for us all. There was another question out there. Okay.
UX designers, why them to say their names?
Sorry, Trisha, but I do have the microphone. I was at a talk yesterday at Scripps Oceanography about climate change, and they said things like the oceans have almost reached the capacity to absorb heat, or the healing curve has crossed 400 for the first time in at least a million years. All of this is absolutely terrifying and impossible to visualize. So what is or can the XR world do to sort of stimulate our collective imaginations, as you call it, Trisha, to help us visualize the future that we're heading towards if we don't do something about it? And particularly our policy makers who don't play games with one.
Do you want to take this one? This is directly what you're trying to do.
Yeah, so it's very much similar to that, where I actually had a similar idea with climate change, where you have these stats on air quality. Air quality is very difficult to conceptualize, and see, and like feel. And you can see it like in some areas, like in big cities in India, you can feel it, see it. But being able to see that in the numbers is really difficult, and then taking people from here and seeing it, like what we're doing here is affecting all over the world. And we can't go there to actually see what the change is, but if you create a world where, you know, as the air quality changes, there's particles in the air you can see, and you can actually feel and see kind of what that world would look like. So translating things like climate change, or changing the world as you kind of develop, like as the sea temperature rises, you see changes in the world that would actually happen. And looking into the future, that's a big thing of also what we're doing is saying, okay, on the more positive side, that like climate change, we want to create kind of a coexistence world for humans and elements. But both for a farmer and for, say, a national park or an investor, that's really hard to conceptualize. But in virtual reality, we can create that, and we can pitch it to both parties and see if that like future vision of what the world could look like would be something that people would invest in.
And if you can bring it down to a local level, sorry to interrupt you, but if you can bring it down to a local level, right, people only care about what they see every single day. So, if you can do this on a level, this is what your world that you see every single day is going to look like. Right? That's kind of interesting potential.
And I think that, well, a lot of studies around XRS, specifically fully immersive VR, is that people retain information better than if they read it or watch it on a small screen, and that it's more emotionally convincing. So something that would be sad on the screen is way more sad in VR. So when you're standing in, the world and you put the slider up to 100 and you're standing in it, it's gonna affect you more. And once again, back to those AI tools and being able to scan things and being able to rapidly make something that is your local community and put a layer of pollution on it is something that would have taken years, 10 years ago, and now can take months.
Yeah. We got time for a couple more. We got time for but one of the things I wanted to get to too on that is like, how do we get to that concept, right? Like, we want to get there and get to see it, but where do we get that concept from? Like, how do we concept together into that space? I like to call it.
Just concept areas.
Concept in VR, it's sensory concepting. What does that mean?
Oh, to like be in VR and then concepting together, like generating concept VR. Yeah, that's actually a really kind of the next step of a lot of creation for XR development right now. Before you're, well, how we're still doing it, most of us, 90% of us are still doing it, is we're creating it in a game engine on our PCs, we're uploading it to our headsets here. But in fact, Sony XR is shipping a new headset very soon that is quite specifically meant to create those things while you are inside the headset. And which is, for those 3D modelers out there, like high quality sculpting and stuff like that will actually be done with your hands, much more like clay inside of a virtual reality scene as opposed to, clicking on mouse and buttons and brush in my box or whatever you're using. So these tools are gravitating from our screen to VR to in VR to VR. And that, I think, that's the most exciting thing for me. And especially if you can do that as a social group, like multi-user experience where you're all in there sculpting together and creating the world together, that's gonna change everything.
I think there's a dollar's value of it, and it's the why build with atoms when you can build with light first, right?
In cognitive science, we touched on this topic called fantasia, which is like a really intense internal mental image. Have you guys ever thought about incorporating this into XR, VR, something with bypass the eye and go directly to the brain, the occipital lobe, and internalize the images? Kind of sci-fi.
This is your edge.
We're starting to talk like a little bit of science fiction here, right? We're going on full dive VR, like, you step onto the locker, like recognition interface. I mean, I haven't looked a whole lot into this. I think it's an interesting concept. It's certainly been explored a lot in science fiction. And see, the question is basically like,
Have you guys ever heard about it happening? Is there research going on about this? I guess I'd say touched on it a lot, but.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen things where Meta is doing some research where they're, controlling, the user interface with brainwaves and, mentally trying to understand what the brain is thinking about and things along those lines. So obviously there's research. You've got the Tesla brain chip, Neuralink, thank you. Those are going towards that realm. You talked a little bit about, there's some apps out there for meditation, for, mental well-being and things like that, things like Trip. But a lot of times the visual, like you don't want to have your eyes open during a lot of those sessions, and basically how do you create that visualization without having somebody look at the visualization of what you're trying to do, that's not really create your own. So it's an interesting way to go, or a direction of research. I don't know much more about it.
It's all of this extrasensory portion of things. Like, if you look at where generative AI kind of started, it started writing letters to us and talking, that's cool. And then it started sending us pictures and now videos, cool. But now it's generating very convincing music. Right? If you go down to Suno AI, it moves you emotionally whether you want it or not. And that's kind of this level of synesthesia that we're starting to see in virtual reality overall. There's a project that's about to be brought up that's all about autism and about neurodivergence. We see strong applications for XR in people who are already used to experiencing reality in multiple ways, right? So if you think of your reality as a spectrum and as these tools, vision is just one. We have sound and how we explore through sound is a robust area for exploration. Gamification is a great way to start. But yeah, great question. Cool. So do we have any time for one more, or do you want to transition to bringing up the MAVERiC?
Somebody has a microphone.
Oh, one more?
Yeah.
One more. Okay.
Hello. I just have a quick question because I was talking to one of my professors about a week ago. He told me that he's been working on like AR for about 20 years or so, and how that's been like implemented into like theme parks and whatever, right? But it was a lot more closed off 20 years ago, so that wasn't even born yet. So I'm just thinking like, what is going on now that will be more ubiquitous to talk about 20 years from now? Trend watchers, anybody? Brad.
I can do a little bit on that. You know, there's a few different things going on. Obviously, you know, everyone's looking forward to smaller, lighter, more powerful headsets. You know, the better they get, you know, the more convincing it is. There's a company called Mojo Vision that's doing like a contact lens that's actually, you know, projecting augmented, you know, imagery into your eyes. It's got a long ways to go. I've tried it outside my eye. And it was super interesting. So there's some interesting things along those lines. The spatial part of it. So, you know, people have been building virtual spaces for people to get together in, you know, for a long time. But if I'm sitting on a train and somebody's in their apartment in London and I can walk into their apartment and be standing there, or they're standing right there with me on the train or something like that. So real time, like, capture of people's spaces, of their avatars, how they're interacting with things, you know, I think we're right at the cusp of that, and I think that's super interesting to see where that's going to go.
All right, last words on either side of you before I hand it over to Trisha for the, so, again, first.
Yeah, I think it's really important to also split apart the idea of VR from XR, because I think the real, I mean, sure, we're gonna have, whether it's full dive or near full dive, like, you know, projectors into our eyes or whatever it is. But it's really thinking about ways to create additional sensory input and then ways to create additional agency. And the interfaces between that and transition layers. That's kind of the place we're playing. It's not necessarily putting on a helmet into your head. It's how it might be audio, it might be haptics, who knows, right? So new ways to interface with the world and ideally expand our capabilities there. And, like, it doesn't even have to be sensory. I think another really important trend that's happening in our society and our world right now is there's just an overflow of data. Like, for an individual human to track everything that is needed is beyond the capacity of, I'd say, most humans. So things like second brains, knowledge management systems, ways to organize data and then applying algorithms or assistants or agents to help us all become more effective versions of ourselves is more of the promise that I'm excited about rather than necessarily virtual reality experience.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is kind of the accessibility of these tools and how it's becoming more interactive and easier to develop. So I've been thinking about ways that I can apply it and bringing people into these kind of natural spaces and interacting with research. But I never had access to that. I didn't know where to start developing that, like what do you start with, what programs do you use, what do you do first, and doing a program like MAVERiC where these guys are able to teach us in 10 weeks like how to develop it. Like the technology's up to that point where it's accessible, I can do it on my laptop, I can do it in the field, and they're able to teach us like the basic skills of how to set up that world and learn how to use it in 10 weeks, which is very impressive. And I think that's something that's really new and able to be like expanded now. And now we can take this virtual world to more people.
Time travel? That's my answer. Because I've spent a lot of time in VR and being go to historical sites, you may rebuild it the way that it might have been 1,000 years ago, to projections of what the Great Barrier Reef is going to look like 100 years from now. And it's like, kind of having to remind myself occasionally what time I live in. And I think that's just being able to flex through time. This is my sci-fi answer for you. I think it's sort of the next new exploration that we have with this technology. So,
Yeah, so first, please a round of applause for our workshop. And I'm going to hand over to Trisha, who will show you the trend of the future as we bring them up here. Go to the next slide really
So
quickly.
I just wanted to show you guys, because we can talk about this all day, but you guys want to see something, right? So we've invited a couple of our MAVERiC teams to come up here. One graduated the winter quarter, and then the one following that just graduated. You can ask them when they're up here, but most of them came in with zero experience as building virtual worlds. It's a 10-week program, we met twice a week, and they put things together. We've had so many wonderful projects, but right now we're really kind of pushing about like how different uses for it right here. In fact, like the VR art dance right there, you see the little picture, that was, they did that same dance in VR and had trails behind them. And then they put that up behind them and they recreated the dance live. We have, beautiful scenes, being able to experience the Aurora Borealis when we were might not be able to go there, see whales, VR art galleries. I mean, there's all sorts of, like, I wanted to put them all up here, but we couldn't do it. So I want to bring up our first group, which is Sam and Melissa. They're here somewhere.
Sam and Melissa, it's your time.
There they are. Come on up.
I did this all weekend on a play that we have to say we should have been there. Next time, Loyola Playhouse says, wow, we're gonna do some fun stuff. Follow, like, subscribe, and all of that stuff.
Yes, I will do that.
Camera,
Okay.
you.
Hello, everybody.
Introduce yourselves.
We have a little script here, but we'll try and look at everybody, of course.
Okay, hello, good evening. Thank you guys for joining us today. My name is Melissa Khan and this is Sam Olsen. Hello. We're excited to share with you guys our VR project called Augmented Threads. This project explores the intersection of fashion and virtual reality, aiming to create a more, a space that's more accessible and immersive, and a more immersive fashion experience.
Yeah, so to introduce our roles, oh, you could go back one slide, thank you. I was the technical director. I had the PC. If you don't know, it's a lot easier to build games and things in a Windows PC, not a Mac. So luckily I got to work with that as a technical director, and also the producer, keeping things on track, as well as looking for the assets that we needed, purchasing anything that we decided we wanted to actually buy and put money into to make our world more pristine.
Yeah, and along that lines, I worked as the artistic director and the lead designer. So whether that was anything from like sourcing assets or 3D modeling and programs like Blender, me and Sarah worked together just to ultimately collaborate on the creative vision that we wanted to bring forward with our world. Okay. And with that being said, we aim to address the fundamental question: how can we forge a deeper, more personal, intimate connection with fashion? Thus, our mission was to transcend the boundaries of traditional experiences and to cultivate an intimate connection with fashion beyond the physical space. We wanted to move beyond the physical limitations of fashion and create a platform where anyone, regardless of their background, can engage with hospitality.
Okay. Oh yeah, that'll be our ending slide. But for now, we want you guys to really experience the world that we built and spent 10 weeks on. So we'll have Trisha kind of walk you through it as we kind of talk alongside it, describe our motivations with it, as well as our design choices.
Yeah. So just to talk.
Mention one thing. So we are showing this on PC, but it was built for VR, but it's a lot easier to show this.
Yes. Things look a lot nicer on PC too. They're a little bit limited on VR, but obviously if you want to experience things, get up close to them, try to touch them, even though you can't. But then it is built for Quest 3.
Okay. Just to go to a little bit more into the project details and a little bit of the artistic direction. So we wanted to bring the essence of renowned brands such as like Louis Vuitton and Schiaparelli into the digital sphere. So ultimately, with that being said, our design process was driven by our commitment to inclusivity. So ensuring that anyone can engage with this in a meaningful way. We wanted to create a virtual reality environment that allows users to explore fashion in a way that's both personal and expansive.
Yeah, and then more on the technical side of things, like I said, this was built using Unity. A lot of 3D modeling of the structures and the buildings was done by Melissa in Blender. We got to kind of work on an iterative process, see what works for us and what doesn't. So for example, Maya is an industry standard for 3D modeling, and we decided Blender was easier for us and more feasible for our project and our timeline. So we got to use that. So the building you see was built by Melissa. A lot of the technical things like these portals, Trisha was able to help me along the way with that and get a lot of those scripting and more technical things done. Sound, there is sound, but we don't want to just talk over each other. But just trying to create an immersive experience. These portals kind of take you to either Louis Vuitton or Schiaparelli, or you can chill with the main hub. There's a runway in the back which we'll eventually get to. And again, we wanted to create this more than just a space that emulates the brand. We wanted to have a space where people can socialize in VR, in VR chat, really get close to these brands. And you don't always get to walk out of Louis Vuitton with 5 new things, but you can definitely walk out of Augmented Threads having met somebody, watch the videos that we provide, look up close at their current collections. Like this whole room was modeled after their spring and summer collection that Tyler the Creator had a hand in designing. So we wanted to use things like AI, so we used to speed up our process, test different textures. So the floors, the walls, as you walk closer, is emulative of the leather that they have a patent on. Their damier print is that kind of checkerboard print that we brought into the space, and just some 3D models as well as those fabrics that we wanted to, put our own spin and show that fashion brands can find a sustainable and even technological way to experiment with the clothing and designs that they make.
Yeah, and just adding on to what Shannon said, just talking a little bit about XR and VR and its applications. We believe that it just moves way beyond fashion itself. I guess fashion itself could be understood as like a broader cultural and artistic context to it. We believe that with VR and XR that it could be applied to such various fields. So we briefly talked about its educational aspect, or this the history work side, for students to learn a little bit more about the history in an immersive way, or we could move towards more of an e-commerce route in which which individuals can maybe virtually try on products and along that line.
Yeah, and then along with like that kind of e-commerce thing, that wasn't necessarily what we wanted to. There we go. Wow, someone should have told me earlier. I'm so sorry. Along with the e-commerce business proposal, that wasn't something necessarily we went into it wanting to do. We really wanted to create the social space and just kind of play with these brands in a virtual environment. But as we got the opportunity to show during the WOW Festival that MAVERiC and Holding Futures was held here in this building. And with that, we got a lot of newcomers trying on VR, and that was something that they asked, where can I buy this? I can totally see myself like buying a dress in this space. And that's something that, we're open to. It's not necessarily the intention that we had, but e-commerce is definitely a big thing. I think the most notable right now is the TikTok shop. I totally thought it was going to go unnoticed, but now I see people are promoting things that they bought from TikTok shop and things like that. And I mean, really any social media site. How many of you guys have a social media? Anything? Facebook, Instagram? Yeah, there's probably some form of shopping experience on that. And that's something to consider that Augmented Threads could provide, and it just allows you to do it in a more virtual sense, but also elevate it, because I think that's something that we wanted to put attention to, is the detail and really feeling like you're in a nice space. Yeah, so So you can kind of see this as a runway where we wanted to introduce the more social aspect as well, if you wanted to add anything.
This is actually more of an addition that we added. Sorry. Sorry about that. But yeah, like Sam said, this is a runway that actually we added in later iterations. So we wanted to bring more of that social aspect to the space in which, just like adding upon limitations that we found in current VR fashion spaces in which they're often like obsolete spaces. So we wanted to hopefully just bring that into our space as well, but improve upon it. So yeah, just future space where VR creators and fashion brands alike can just showcase their work.
Yeah, and we're definitely looking forward to keep iterating on this, add more brands, work on making things more technically advanced, as well as increasing our usability, get users in there, throw runway parties, things like that, and really see where it takes us. But yeah, thanks, and if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Thanks, I was also gonna ask this to the other group too. What is really advanced VR to you guys? I think that some of the best things that I've seen is like old Skyrim, where all the NPCs are controlled by AI. And so what do you think? Like, what's the cutting edge of VR stuff?
So personally, I mean, this was our first experience with VR anything, so it's definitely a learning process and kind of defining that for ourselves. I mean, just like you said, like, what was it, Elder Scrolls, did you say? Skyrim? Oh yeah, okay, sorry, Skyrim, or I think a Ready Player One, where you just kind of like can go and experience things maybe with a lighter headset on your face, but I think like the cutting edge of VR is really just, I think, getting to a point where, let's say just like everyone in this room has a VR headset, and later on I go home and I say, oh, like, meet me here. Because right now, it's kind of I feel like there's a niche group where like it's kind of a subset of people that are VR nerds or, I don't know, VR avid users. And I think once it's as common as our phone, then I think people will be more open to just experiencing and socializing in a virtual space and be more used to that. But is there anything else? Okay.
That was great.
I'm a costume designer in UCSD. I did 3 shows here. So I'm just wondering, do you ever, this idea came to my mind because I see a lot of movie like have this kind of motion capture suits. So will that be able to be something we can incorporate in the future? Like if someone they have that motion capture suit in their house, they can wear it on and put on the VR headset, come in here and try on clothes. Is that something like maybe we can do in the future? Because that will make my job much easier, so I don't have to call the actor to come here and then size, then design the stuff for them. So I see this as a virtual studio for me.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it definitely could be applied in that way. I'm not sure if you might have been introduced to molding features where we use MAVERiC used McCovey, which is like motion tracking, like a motion tracking system, which they applied to basically rig a character that Trisha modeled herself. So I think definitely it could be extended in that ways. I can't see why it wouldn't be able to, but
yeah, getting into and out of it, like you experienced, right? Makopi is this, it's basically a deconstructed PlayStation controller is strapped to your head and your arms, and you get the arms and legs of VR through your phone. So on that tech, like we had talked about earlier tonight, it's really about accessibility, which is a good transition point for our next group. Thank you very much to and Sim Halifax are, I think I got it right. They're brand new, minted just tonight.
This group just graduated on Tuesday, the first drone they ever built.
Okay, remember to have a seat, you're on camera, you're here for a while. You're ready to take questions? The last time. All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. We are SynHealth VR, soon to be SynHealth XR. We are very, very grateful to Trisha and Joe for everything that they've done. I just want you to know that even though we do come from some of us tech backgrounds, what MAVERiC was able to support us with was just miraculous. We learned this in less than 10 weeks. Really, when you think about it, our project was actually done in 4 weeks, in 40 hours. And they took us from 0 to 100. And a big thank you to Mr. Horowitt as well. And big thank you to Design Innovation. And we're just very grateful for the opportunity to be able to make a difference with concepts that we're studying, concepts that we care about, and concepts that can make a difference in the world. So just starting off, so I'm Asia, and well, and so we're a MAVERiC student team. We're really passionate about making a difference for students with disabilities. Eventually, of course, we'll be expanding to people with disabilities. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm the first one. I like that outfit. The producer. We have Calista, who's the design lead, with Eleanor, who's our tech lead, and we have Philip. We're going to go just briefly to our backgrounds and then talk about our project. So I'm Asia Bahid. I'm the producer, double major, double minor, so philosophy, pop sci, and other things. And so I assisted in the ideation and the research and development of this project concept. As project manager, I facilitated the progress of the project through the structuring of team communication channels, the creation of the team project hub and troubleshooting, and facilitated this project presentation. I do my honors research in semiotics, social media technology, and society, and we'll be doing another project this coming year at UCSC. I have skills now in Unity and before in project management, ideation, research and analysis, training and development, won the undergraduate research award in cognitive neuroscience, and I have experience in both humanities research and experimentation methodologies and cognitive science ones as well. And our next team member is Calista.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. My name is Calista Cancel. I'm a cog-sci design major here and a CSS designer. My main role was overseeing all the user interaction elements of our world, anything UI, UX, that was me. I worked pretty closely with the design or the tech leads on the left, back and forth, iterating our worlds. But yeah, anything design.
Hi everyone, my name is Eleanor. I'm a first year neurobiology major. My role in this project was as a tech lead. I started implementing the AI component of our scene, and I also assisted in implementing the brightness and audio sliders, which we'll talk about later. My skills are as a researcher in the Campbell Lab for pediatric neuroscience, which is kind of what got me interested in this work in the first place. And then outside of that, I have skills in Unity, Unix, content definition, and a few other topics.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you all though. My name is Philip and I'm a current second year student here in majoring in MCS and having a minor in ICANN and Call. And as the other tech lead of this project, I also assisted with work closely with algorithms and implementing writings and audio modulators. I also work on this general bug fixing and troubleshooting for the project. And I'd also brainstorm along with working with three friends here, and ensuring this project is going well and have a clear vision for what we want to do. And outside of this project, also currently here in the Vermont College of Engineers program, which I basically mentored a cohort of around 20 plus students in their version of the capstone project, in which they all essentially just address a social justice issue, which is a part of like why I even gravitated towards like part of it is. And as I currently have a leadership development recently learned in Unity, as well as general project management and programming languages.
So our project focus is autism. 1 in 36 8-year-old children were estimated to have autism in 2020. And the symptoms of autism encompass many different areas. One is sensitivity to bright lights. The other is vulnerability to loud sounds or noisy places, discomfort in crowded locations, difficulty with social interaction, and repetitive behavior.
Okay, so on the screen right now is some current treatments of autism. What we're going to be focusing on is the intersection between autism and virtual reality. So as of right now, there is a cross-section between the two. However, we really want to advance the conversation and take it one step further. Our project is going to focus more on making the scene a little bit more real. Past projects have this intersection, but the reality aspect isn't as developed, so that was something we really wanted to highlight in our project, as well as it being standalone. So past projects have the need for a teacher or a therapist to be there. Our project is standalone in VR chat. It really gives the control to the autistic individual and transitions the control to them. Without the need of a teacher or therapist. So that was something that we found really important with our project and was a main goal as a reason.
So the way we decided to take things a step further, to avoid having to have a therapist or a teacher in the room with the same person as a training session, we decided to implement AI or try to implement AI in our VR space so that they will have a person to talk to while they learn how to navigate this experience. So our inspiration for this setting is that we're all students and we can all relate to being in a classroom and we've known, many of us have experience knowing special education and how that works. So we thought that the most familiar location for us would be in a school much like this one. So right here in front of us is our virtual student, Eden. He currently does not converse in VR right now, but he can converse in Unity, which is what we'll be showing after this demonstration. Behind the avatar, yes, there are 2 desks that allow the user to control sensory experience. So before we mentioned that 2 of the biggest triggers for people with autism are brightness and audio input. So with the chair on the left, I believe that is our brightness chair. It's interactable, you can sit in it, and that slider controls the brightness in the room, so the user themselves can choose a particular setting that is most comfortable for them, and then work their way up towards whatever they're trying to get to. And then on the other desk to the right, yes. This is an audio slider, so it may be a bit quiet in this room, but there's some ambient noise in the background with people yelling, or just moving around their desks, regular classroom noise. Yeah, yeah, it's right there. And the user can also control that experience.
So this group was one other before started to implement generative AI into the projects. So this is a particular cool tool called Beamworld that we've been working with in the studio for about a year now. You might have seen other ones like the NVIDIA casts and such. So we gave them the tool, but unfortunately it doesn't function in the VR chat the way we wanted to because of the
Yes.
but it is very robust and very there. So we're showing you now, we're bringing up now. All this actually is going to be plugged into almost any scene.
Aiden, do you hear me?
Oh, hey, what's up?
Good job. Good to see you. How's your day going? It's good to see you, Aiden. How's your day going?
So in a lot of rooms, it's challenging to talk to a robot from someone who just did this.
I'm doing great, thanks for asking. That's awesome. So what have you been up to lately? Any exciting? Well, not much, to be honest. Just been focusing on my music and exploring some different genres. I've been experimenting with blending different styles together and trying to come up with something unique. It's been a lot of, oh, definitely. Music is such a powerful form of expression. There's just so many incredible musicians out there. It's hard to keep up sometimes. But that
It's literally hearing itself.
absolutely. It can be overwhelming with the amount of music that's out there, but it's worth it to dive.
Great conversation.
I never do an overhead sound, but I think you get the idea of being able to practice talking to somebody, especially in environments.
And so
Hello?
yes, so we're going to finish off our presentation, but take us into future directions of this project.
So as you can see, the project is still very well like in its early stages, and well, when I take this project like that's like a much further like more robust direction. And one like way that we identified is by applying the UCSD Blackstone Launchpad program, which we would be able like take this idea and just make it a reality, and through this we'd be able to add even like more like settings, not just in classroom. And some settings that we came up with were like ABCD, for example, like we thought like that'd be like a very great way to just get people with get like autistic people to say and sorry, I'm very tired today. It's a way to get people trained with navigating these sort of environments. We also came up with like a restaurant, and this is actually like our original vision for the project, and that people, the player like in the world would have to like interact with like take for example a rude waiter, and maybe like up to the player just like to like see how they can like just navigate through a situation like this, and hopefully be able to just navigate this sort of thing like in the future. And we're also interested in just upgrading the UI and overall and continuing to polish the overall user experience. And we also just want to just really want to broaden this a testament to how like VR can be used in like many other ways, not necessarily just gaming. Like reducing like this can be used to support like autistic people or just really demonstrate that autistic people can live up fulfilling and robust lives. Actually, yeah, sorry about that. Yes. And to end you all off, I'd like to leave you with this quote. Helping one person might not change the world, but it could change the world for one person by anonymous. And we'd also like to give a great thank you to Trisha and Joe and the entire MAVERiC team for all your support. Thanks to all of you.
Yeah, I only have one mic, so I gotta mic it. So questions about accessibility, autism, and the future of that in XR for our new team.
You guys, great projects, very nice. So in one of my classes I took last quarter as well, we worked on architecture and how that can like influence, our real size. And I'm thinking, so one of the projects that my friend was on, she said she wanted to work on like built environments for people with divergence and autism. So what's the benefit of doing it in augmented reality or virtual reality compared to in real life?
That's a really good question, and definitely something that we thought very hard about at the beginning of this project. So at the start, we were actually doing some research about how people have been integrating this technology to be able to treat, or at least as a therapy mechanism for individuals with autism. And what happens currently is that there are spaces that people have built to emulate places like classrooms or a busy street, a busy city, any kind of triggering location, and a teacher will enter in as an avatar, similar to VR chat, where a real person will play a virtual character. So that requires a therapist to be available or a teacher to be available, some kind of trained specialist. And we thought that AI would be an incredibly great application here so that an individual can practice whenever they're comfortable, whenever they feel the most confident at home, within the comfort of their own bedroom even. So that was really the beginning of our idea for this project.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. It actually speaks to why we're here in the first place. Why VR? Why XR? And we have nature outside. Why do we do this? So the name of our group is actually SimHealth. That stands for Simulated Health. And we're looking at future therapy applications for this project as we expand. But what's the difference here? Here we can simulate things. Where in the real world, not necessarily. Does that make sense? So literally back and forth, practice, focus, and specifically with sensory applications, the sensory processing disorder. I have a gazillion ideas right now of how we can incorporate this. So yes, we can do it in the real world. We are doing it to some extent. Not all humans are interacting with the real world as we interact with the real world. Neurodiversity is a thing. It's a huge thing, and we will continue to, I believe, be as something that we're going to have to deal with in the world, as we have so much going on around us. So with these simulated capacities, we can train those. It's almost like, I think that's the best way to say it, that we can train with repetitive practice. I think that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna bring it back to you on this final note in our couple of minutes here we have, but this is an embodied experience, we brought you into this cohort because of your embodied experience. How did that inform you in designing this as kind of a thought that you had?
Yeah, definitely, if you had more time, sorry, something we want to really focus on in future iterations is getting this in the hands of our target audience. Yeah, we didn't get much user testing done outside of our group, a couple of other members, but definitely if we get this in the hands of people with autism, that is where this project would go. Yeah.
Just a little more. Yeah.
Just want to be sensitive to time as we got going on. So one more question before.
Hi. So I'm curious about the tools that new developers have currently for VR and XR in general. And I noticed you guys are using VR chat, which is typically seen as like a chatting and gaming module. So I was wondering how your experience was developing for it, and if you felt like this tool was robust enough to accomplish it.
So, well, we developed this project like primarily in Unity, and well, as you all may already be aware, none of us knew how to use Unity before this, and even then, it's still really confident. If you've ever seen like the Unity interface, there's like a million buttons, and it's really intimidating at this. Honestly, the way that I just like navigating this is just like doing with like assistance or like Trisha and Joe is getting a lot of these like this bugs fixed. We will admit that like getting even just the sliders working was somewhat unexpected at first. Right, this slider can break every so often, and at one point we even thought that that even had been broken and like something they were using. It was sort of like incompatibility there. And I think like the solution like just navigating sort of like what we can just continue asking questions. They make sure that like you get like the support that you need. And there's only so much that like user supporters can help you. Sometimes you need like a real person that gets the answer that you need.
I think as Scott said, there's definitely a learning curve, but throughout this entire experience, I think that the biggest take-home message in it for me as a developer was that the possibilities are truly endless with a tool like Unity, with tools like Emerald AI and all of the other AI developing tools that we've been exposed to throughout these short 10 weeks. It's really endless, the list.
If there's anyone in this room who's working on any project, a real life project, going back to your question actually, VR provides endless opportunities, as does XR, especially for those of us that can think of health applications or knowledge building applications. There's so many different real life differences that we can make using this technology. And our technology is evolving so rapidly. We would highly recommend MAVERiC and to take advantage of the Design and Innovation Institute. There are people here on campus that are here to support us. And by them supporting us, we can support other human beings through our work. We're not just here to learn for no reason. We're here to apply the learning to really real world applications and make the lives of other humans easier and deal with the challenges that we're dealing with in the world.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Close out here. Trisha, so we're about to close out. I'm going to bring Trisha out here as you those MAVERiC selects up to have a final word on our MAVERiC.
Okay, yeah, they're all the ones back there. They're all partying now, all their stuff is over. They did an amazing job. It's not easy to learn what they learned in such a short amount of time. And a lot of the times, like, the degree that I had, the entire 10 weeks of just like one program, just learning how to model something. They learned how to model, they learned how to program, they're doing audio design, they're producing, it's so much to be able to come out with things like that at the end of 10 weeks. They put the time in, they put so much passion into it, and I'm just having so much fun doing this. It's amazing. So thank you, Greg. Thank you, Roman, for making it happen. And thank you, MAVERiCs. I think that's it.
to learn more, we have our shameless plug, go to innovation.ucsc.edu for all the happenings that are going on within the Office of Innovation, the Design and Innovation Building, and UCSC in general. If you have ideas for programs you'd like us to do, please let us know. We always kind of looking for good people and good thoughts to do it. And as we said at the start of this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end. We're all about continuous dialogues, and we always come to these things with a beginner's mindset. So help teach us as well. So have a great night, and thank you so much.